Ninth Vox Log of Diabetes Investigator Vox Log IX, 992, 995, and 41. While in hindsight, it seems obvious that the seditionists would have moved up the coup's timetable after we escaped their clutches at the gala, Cell Sphinx was unprepared for what we found ourselves neck-deep in before the day was through. Taking the consortium-arranged mag rail up dome to the pre-indicated sewer access, we slipped in with an inconspicuous train of Rogue Trader Moon's dynastic guards, 100 strong. Ascending through several kilometers of twisting, branching, and foul-smelling enclosed drainage causeways, we actually encountered nearly a dozen patrols from Stepanov's Royal Guard. Luckily, Greybast's witch senses picked up each one well before we would have run into them, and so evasion was trivial. A final grate at the top of the tunnels barred our exit out onto the 4th level of the multi-tiered royal quarters, this one secured by a resilient digital lock that gave even Garn pause for thought. As our tech savant scratched his pearlescent scalp, Blackwater pulled out a compact las cutter, the kind you'd see fire wardens use to free pin motorists from a burning auto carriage crash, and got to melting the barrier to slag. Satisfied with the breach, he then proceeded to instruct the main body of his patron's troopers to remain behind in the tunnels until called up by shortwave Vox. Emerging out onto the 4th level, the first souls we encountered after pushing through a perimeter hedge were servants bustling about a busy scullery. Beyond this enterprise, some several hundred meters away, past rows of residences, was the level's main thoroughfare, beginning to slip upwards toward a gated checkpoint and security tunnel. Someone had a mind to send Northstrike Service go forward to the gate sentries in order to announce our approach, but he wasn't keen on potentially losing such a prized possession from his earlier Navy days, and the matter was dropped. One of the menials spotted us as we emerged from the hedge, leaving behind a 4-man detail of the dynastic troopers at the centered grate, but no one else seemed to take note as we strode purposefully up to the 5th tier's entrance. 2 royal guards, wearing handsomely stylized flak cuirasses over finely pressed dress uniforms and tall, ornate shako caps, alerted to our presence once we were several dozen paces away. Hurriedly dipping into some side room within the tunnel, we picked up our pace. Getting closer, we saw the same pair re-emerge and take cover behind a sandbagged barricade of plasteel-reinforced rockcrete. As one began to address us, shouting from afar, the other drew his hotshot lasgun and stitched a vicious burst into the first's side from point blank. He then tugged a purple band out of a pocket and secured it around his upper arm before swinging his weapon around to spray us with a hail of directed energy. The jig, quite obviously, was up. Cell Sphinx and Griffin sprung into action, cutting through any resistance that appeared either in the tunnel or side room. I secured one of the purple-banded corpse's encrypted microbeads and was treated to a wideband broadcast drowning out all other traffic. Initiate Operation Platinum, repeated every couple of seconds. Analyzing the gate controls, Blackwater decided to call up his paramilitary contingent and have them hold the tunnel against seditionist reinforcements following us up from the lower tiers. Once that command had been wirelessly relayed, we opened the 5th level's gate via console and poured through. I pulled one of the souped-up las pistols off of a trader's body, but I'm no marksman when it comes to energy weapons, and I didn't exactly have the time to change that, so I shoved it in my briefcase for later consideration. Automatic las fire could be heard all across the highest level of Ramar Primus, and the lazily meandering cobblestone lane in front of us was choked with dozens of royal guards, an even split of rebels and loyalists, it seemed. Shot-up auto carriages were slowly beginning to burn on the shoulders of the road. A powerful explosion reverberated throughout the level from somewhere deeper, and as we began jogging down the street, a warning interrupted the looping message on the trader's VoxNet. Kingmaker has not been disposed of. The original loop resumed afterwards, and as the royal family's primary residence came into view, swaddled in curls of smoke and dust, it was clear that the massive front doors had been the target of the blast previously felt. We got the drop on a half-dozen more seditionist troopers before splitting the strike team. Cell Griffin, with Garn attached, hooking around the southern hallway while the rest of us went north. Spirited firefights down the length of these column-lined corridors made for a dynamic and challenging tactical environment. Upon reaching the northeast corner of the mansion's ground floor, I spotted a cluster of the bastards pumping las fire into an inner chamber and tossed a stun grenade their way. One fellow rolled out of its blast before tossing back some pocket artillery of his own, the damn thing detonating practically on my feet. I would have been minced grok's meat if Draken's conversion field hadn't triggered in that instant, the ring growing hot on my finger as hundreds of shrapnel fragments disintegrated and as many little flashes of light. For being an Ordo Xenos mole with a bomb inside his head, that Jeremiah sure had some nice kit. Dark ran past me around this time, swinging his witch staff at another seditionist trooper plinking at us from behind a large statue. I'm not sure what happened next, but his mind overloaded and projected phantasmal imagery of the Empyrean into the heads of damn near everyone in the building. I don't really care to describe what I saw specifically, but by the time the after-images faded, the magazine in my auto pistol was empty and our cycle was down for the count. Glancing at him and seeing him still stirring, I moved on with Hilaire as he swept into the eastern hallway, clearing out the remaining troopers still laying siege to the inner rooms. Any movement in the doorways attracted a blizzard of energy pulses, so it took a bit of shouting and proving of our identities to placate the loyalist defenders. Proceeding inside, we found a small surviving detachment of royal guards led by the household's commander, a one Grand Guardsman, Vadim Sorokin. I learned little about the man, but if the heap of bodies bearing the purple armbands of the rebellion in front of his scorched and overturned table was anything to go by, then the gently smoking hotshot las pistol in his hand was a long-time companion of his. When we explained our intention to evacuate the royal family, he shook his head grimly and said the king couldn't be moved before showing us into the monarch's bedchamber. Inside, Stepanov, the soldier king, laid motionless on a luxurious mattress, attached to thick bundles of cables and medical tubing before a suite of softly beeping Medicae equipment. Also present were the crowned prince and princess, the former brandishing a decorative dueling saber in a manner which inspired little confidence in his ability to use it. Kirill would go on to explain that his father had been bedridden for some time, and that his condition seemed terminal. Detaching him from the life support cogitators to move him, while brutally pragmatic, was nonetheless unconscionable to the prince and his wife. Once again interrupting the loop, announcing the commencement of Operation Platinum, traffic on the rebel Voxnet indicated the approach of Kingpin, apparently their commander, towards the royal household. As I relayed this to my fellow acolytes, Sorokin chimed in, speculating that this traitor's commander was actually his second-in-command, Podechik Colonel Vladimir Grippenberg. Blackwater had also just finished a series of transmissions with his own armsman back at the Axis tunnel, the sullen slump of his shoulders telling me all I needed to know. Asking the guard commander when he might expect relief from additional loyalist forces, he could only guess at 20 to 30 minutes, assuming they had to fight their way up from the lower tiers. Checking our weapons and steeling our nerves, the strike team divided by its constituent cells to take up defensive positions out in the halls. Griffin moved off to the northeastern corner as we posted up at the southeastern one. Several minutes of incredible tension passed before the distant din of shouted orders and the footfalls of dozens of boots ascending the mansion's front steps began to waft through the vaulted ceilings of the long hallways. They approached cautiously at first, their shakos bobbing up and down as they trotted around the distant corner with their hotshots at the low ready. Then Sphinx opened up. Their foes now identified, the seditionists charged us with glinting bayonets and bellowed cries. I was out of man-stopper cartridges at this point, but even my regular ammunition was enough to check their rushes through sheer volume of fire. I don't think I hit much, but I didn't really need to, the heavier weaponry of the other acolytes exacting a brutal toll from the now pinned rebel ranks. A melee never developing, the firefight that grew in its place became a strobing light show of exceptional fury. Hundreds of las pulses, bolts, and solid projectiles lancing up and down the lavish corridor. Splintered wood and pulverized marble became a kind of second atmosphere as small geysers of dirt erupted from decorated planters set into the walls. I was struck several times at the inner corner I was shooting around, the conversion field catching most of it before overloading on one final flash of light. Dissatisfied with his trooper's progress, or simply too slow to have arrived sooner, the hulking, power-armored form of traitor Colonel Grippenberg eventually lumbered around the corner at the end of the hallway. His thick ceramic breastplate bore a defaced facsimile of the Romarian monarch's crest, and in his gauntleted hands he hefted a bizarre power sword of non-imperial make, alongside a plasma pistol emitting a sickly crimson glow from its coils. He leveled the second weapon at the column Blackwater was firing from behind and let loose a pulse of searing matter. The effects were gruesome, the intense heat melting through the marble pillar before spraying the Corsair's augmetic lead with hot gases and droplets of molten stone. Valaire's tough, but that kind of firepower will brutalize any mortal man. Raybast hit the bastard with some kind of disorienting psychic force that sent him back the way he came, at least temporarily. In the interim, we gunned down the remainder of the turned house guard before Grippenberg rounded the corner again. Higher, badly hit himself, had triaged Blackwater's mangled limb, allowing the Voidsman to lurch back to a firing position in time to sink a brutal volley of radioactive fire into the colonel. One pulse in particular seemed to rupture a hydraulic line, spraying the traitor's face before igniting in a gout of flame, his expensive suit of articulating plates becoming a brazen bull. A fitting, if ignoble, end for the rebellion's ground commander. Things have been a blur in the hours since. El Griffin had fared well in the fight to defend their respective hallway, and loyalist reinforcements arrived to mop up the remaining seditionists. Grand Prince Frolov, disgraced and now wanted by every imperial apparatus in the system, has disappeared. Our forcing of the premature launch of Operation Platinum, while overall done sloppily, ultimately worked out in our favor. The Romarian Third Corps never made it out of their staging grounds in the nearby mountain ranges. Commissariat representatives are en route now to liquidate those commanders complicit in the foiled plot. I imagine we'll have some days before Archibald, or whomever our handler is now, reaches out to us to arrange new assignments. A small part of me hopes Cell Sphinx remains intact. These lugheads aren't half bad, though a brief leave of absence would be appreciated. I've got a final report to compile. Hopefully the RBDs here on Ramar will find it useful in tying up the coup's loose ends. I also need to get over to the Sienkov estate. The young nobleman needs debriefing now that he finally seems to be thinking for himself. I'm wrapping this up before a congregation starts shuffling in here for morning services. I found this quiet little chapel. Good place to think. Calm. This is Arbides Investigator, and Inquisitorial Acolyte, Salernus. Signing off. In Vox Log.